You're going to want to grab your stash of fabric scraps because today we're making some beautiful DIYs using our large scraps all the way down to the tiny ones. Let's get started. I have an assortment of some different green fabrics here. You can see I've got all kinds of different patterns. I even have different textures. You're also going to need some green cardstock. This is the Forest Pack from Recollections. I picked this up at Michael's. I'm choosing the two lighter colors, but of course you can use whatever you'd like. I'm using some fabric glue for this project because fabric glue remains nice and pliable. So I'm going to also be using a plastic card. You could use a piece of cardboard to smooth out the glue. I'm going to just start off by just trimming off any of the fabric ends and removing the strings. And then I'm going to start to apply some of the glue to the cardstock. I'm applying it quite generously and then using my card to just smooth it out. This works very, very well. I do want the glue to go all the way to the edge. You can see here, I'm just covering half of the cardstock with my glue because I'm going to use two different types of fabric on here. You could use one sheet or piece of fabric to cover the whole entire sheet. That is up to you. There is no right or wrong when it comes to doing this. So I applied the fabric into the glue and I smoothed it and pressed it down. Now I'm just going to trim off any excess. You can see this is a little bit of a bigger scrap of fabric too. I'm going to go in and just add a little bit more glue as needed. I'm also working on a protected surface. I'm working on a craft mat so I don't get glue all over my craft table. Now I'm going to go in and apply glue on the other side. Same process as before. And this time around though, I am going to be using a different fabric. I like to do this technique because it just opens up a few more options on how you can use your fabric because it just adds a bit more stability to your fabric. So you can see here now, I'm just going to press that into place, smooth it out, and then again, trim off any of the excess fabric. If you're new, I want to say a big welcome. And if you're returning, I want to thank you all so much for your continued support. I truly do appreciate it. So I'm going to go ahead now and add some glue to the other side of our cardstock. I didn't worry about allowing it to dry first before I did this step because I am going to let it dry overnight in the next step here, but first I just needed to cover all of that up. Now I'm going to add some weight to the top of this, and again, like I said before, I'm going to allow it to dry overnight. So I'm going to do a second sheet of cardstock, but this time I'm doing a little bit of a different technique. I've got some beautiful scraps of fabric. These are smaller pieces. You can see I'm just trimming off any of the seams that are showing because that'll just give too much bulk to the technique that I am doing. Just going to trim that down, and then this piece, I only had this little scrap left, so I am going to cut that down into 4 little pieces. And then I'm going to go ahead and just gather up some of my other material, little pieces of scrap, just cutting them down. You can see this one's all misshapen, so I was just cutting that into a square shape. Now I'm going to apply some glue in sections. I didn't want to cover the whole thing in glue because I'm creating a little patchwork look, and if I added glue all over, chances are it'll dry out before I get to that section. So I'm just gonna apply little scraps into where the glue was already applied, making sure that I add that pretty little decorative fabric I just added there sporadically throughout so it's nice and even. Just so I can make use of it because I just love that fabric. It's an old shirt of mine and I just love that pattern. I think it's so fun. So I'm going to go ahead and just continue to fill it all in, and then I'm going to go ahead, flip it over and work on the back side, but I'm just going to go the same way I did before and just add some larger scraps onto the back, just like you see me doing here, just like before. And then I'm going to allow these pieces to dry as well. You could use the same technique and create a book cover. I've done that before. I will have some other fabric scrap DIY videos for you linked down below in the description box for you to check out if you are wanting to bust your stash. So I'm going to allow this to dry. You can see how beautiful it looks. while those are drying, I did let them dry overnight, but I decided I'm gonna create something kind of fun here. I had these strips of fabric in this beautiful pattern, and this again is an old shirt of mine. I've used it several times in different projects. I'm creating just single knots in these strips. And what I'm planning on doing is creating like little flower buds out of these knots. So with the cardstock and fabric, I am going to be cutting some leaves out of that, and I'll show you that here in a minute, but I just wanted to show you how you can create the blossoms so you can have those all ready to go once your cardstock and fabric is all dry. So I did a double knot here. I thought, let's try making some bigger buds. I wasn't sure if this was going to work or not. I didn't end up using these larger ones, but if you are doing a bigger piece, that's how you can create some larger buds. So it's the next day and my fabric and paper or cardstock is all dry. So I'm going to just trim up the edges. I don't want all that excess there. You can save those scraps if you'd like. I'm giving myself permission to throw those away. I'm now going to just do some simple leaf shapes using my scissors. You can also use a die set, and I will be showing you that in a minute. You could probably also use your Cricut maker if you have one. I don't, so I'm just doing this by hand. You can see I'm just going to trim off any of the little excess bits that I didn't cut leaves out of because these were, well, just a little bit too small. I did manage to squeeze getting some tiny leaves out of some of the sections, and then I just allowed myself again to throw out any excess. Otherwise, I become a hoarder of all these little bits and pieces. So now I'm going to show you how to do the die set. You will need a precision plate for this, and I should have actually used a newer cutting plate with this as well because I did struggle with getting it cut out a bit, but I did get the job done. It worked in the end. So I'm just going to cut out a little piece of our fabric and cardstock, put our die in place, and then use the Sizzix Big Shot. Now, I should have also moved my die around on the plate. I find that you end up getting a nice clean cut. Put it through your machine several times, but here's where I discovered that it didn't cut all the way through, and I should have moved this around on my plate. I find that it ends up, I don't know, putting different pressure points on something like this, but the leaves did cut out. I'm just going to use my scissors to cut them the rest of the way out. And then you can, because that's the only portion I needed for this project anyways, was just the leaves. I don't need the stem for this, but you can see the stem or the leaf pattern here looks pretty cool. You could use that in a journal, or you could frame it or do something with that. But I decided to just trim out more leaves out of any of the sections that I was able to salvage. And here they are. Aren't they cute? So I've got my buds and my leaves, and now you're also going to need a branch. Now I'm using a red willow branch here, but you can use anything. Just make sure it's got lots of little forks coming off of the branch. I'm going to just trim it down a little bit and clean up the bottom just so it's easier to put into a vase when I'm done. Now I'm adding just a little bit of hot glue on the leaf, and then I'm going to put it into the joints of each of the stems that are coming off of our branch. You can see me holding it, allowing the glue to set before I let it go. This will take a little while to work on, but just put on a movie or a video on YouTube, and then just work slowly and take your time. This is a really relaxing craft, and I actually think it turned out amazing. It is a great spring craft. You could also do this with kids. You can make these leaves as big as you want to, and the buds as big as you want to as well. So I'm going to just trim off a little bit of the end as well. It just gave me more space to adhere glue, and it just gave me better adhesion. Another trick too is that I decided, I'm like, let's give a little bit more texture to these leaves. So I decided to try bending them, and because I used the fabric glue, this remained really nice and pliable. So that just gave a little bit of shape, and I decided to go back in and do that for all my leaves. The hot glue actually is holding together fairly well onto the branch. I don't know how well it will hold up long term because this is the first time I've done this before. If you can suggest another glue that gives a quick hold, please leave that suggestion down in the comments section. Another thing you'll see me doing is that I'm adding the large leaves on the bottom and further in, and then I'm going to go smaller as I move out on the branch. So I've got that all in place now. I'm going to add my buds. Now I was looking and I'm like, I don't know if I want to add the buds, but I'm like, you know what? This is for spring. Spring's got those pretty little flower buds. I'm just going to go for it to add that pop of color that we all love for springtime. So I'm adding a little bit of hot glue on both ends of the knots. That way here, it will prevent it from unraveling. I apologize, I'm out of frame right here, but I will show you here in a second how I do that. Just add just a little bit of hot glue on the one end, and then you're gonna put hot glue on the other end and put it into place, snuggled up into the leaves, just like you see me doing here. Trim off any of the excess fabric. Again, you can save those little bits if you want. And then just tuck that into the leaves, and you can see how pretty that looks. It looks like little flower buds bursting at spring. I think it just turned out so beautiful. So one thing I haven't touched on much is felt scraps. I've got this bag of some neutral colors. I wanted some of the white. I've got this stiffened felt fabric as well. This is from Arteza. It's not a scrap, but you can see I was starting to use it already. You're also going to need some heat bond with some paper backing. You need extra strong, and follow the directions on the brand that you're using. I'm also going to use an iron. I'm using my mini press. You need some parchment paper, your scraps of fabric with a pretty little pattern on it. And you can see I already have my felt cut down to size 2. So I'm going to use this beautiful floral and coral fabric again. It's one of my favorites. And I needed to iron it so I can have a good look at the pattern and choose what I wanted to use out of this fabric. I needed some little pieces here, just nice little squares, where I'm focusing on a small pattern in the center. So I had seen this idea on Pinterest where people use their tiny scraps to make fabric stamps, and I absolutely fell in love with the idea. So I decided to try and create my own. I'm just going to go through all these different types of fabrics. I've got several types here. This is like a really soft fabric here. I don't know the names of my fabrics, sorry. So if you know the name of this one, please leave me a message down below. All right, so I'm just going to again just go through all of these and just cut out some of the patterns. This is an old tank top of mine, and it has a beautiful pattern and some sequins, so I'm just going to cut some of that out. And then I'm also going to be using this Cricut press mat as well for this. It's nice and small. I'm going to just trim this down, and I couldn't get a nice clean edge, so I decided to use a rotary blade and a steel ruler on a flat surface. My rotary cutter here was not working very well, I think because I have a handle on it, and I kept on like not pressing the handle properly. So I ended up switching out to my Dollar Tree rotary cutter later on, but I just finished this job using that one. So now I'm going to just cut down the strips that I need. So I'm just using what I have. So you might have some that's a large sheet or some thicker strips. Use whatever you have or go and buy some. This was a little bit tedious using these thin strips, but I didn't want to run to the store to get some new stuff. I just wanted to use what I had. So I got that all into place, pressed it down with parchment paper, and then I did the same with all my other little scraps here. It turned out that 3 strips was just enough for each of the little pieces of fabric that I cut out. So you do want to allow these all to cool before removing the paper backing. And I have to say, Removing the paper backing was so satisfying. I don't know why, but I love doing that. Just be careful. I did find that sometimes it wanted to rip off. So there you have it. We're all ready to go. Now we're going to apply them to our felt fabrics. So I'm going to experiment on both. The one that is stiffened, pre-stiffened, and then the regular craft felt. So I'm going, the ones with the green is on the stiffened, the Arteza stiffened fabric. And then the pinks are on the regular craft felt. So I put those into place. I'm gonna, again, iron it using my Cricut mini press. And you're gonna wanna let those cool down before you cut them out. So they're all cooled down now. I'm going to use my pinking shears to cut them out. Now these are really old pinking shears. I got them from my mom and they're not sharp anymore. I did use some tinfoil to help sharpen them up a little bit, but they aren't the best. I do need to get them professionally done. But you can see using the pinking shears gives that stamp look. And this is the stiffened felt, and that cut out really well. I did struggle a little bit more with the soft stuff. Again, that's probably because my pinking shears need to be sharpened, but it worked out pretty good as well. I'm thinking I would actually like it better if the felt was backed onto a piece of cardstock, but you can see how cute these are, and they were so easy and fun to make. So you can use these for anything, different projects, but this is going to be a 3-part DIY for something that I want to try and create. So this is the next project. This is going to just be using some of our medium-sized scraps here. And I needed to cut this down. It was too big for the project that I wanted to make. So I'm just gonna use my steel ruler, and I'm also going to be using my Dollar Tree rotary cutter, but first I wanted to cut it down just using my scissors. I don't have measurements. I just eyeballed all of this. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the same. Now what I'm doing is creating a little pouch or like a little envelope. So I just need to cut off any of the excess, and then you can see a cute little pouch I formed. I'm just going really simple. There are other ways to create it, but I just wanted to go with something very easy and simple. Just going to line up my ruler and the edge of the fabric to the edge of my cutting board, and then I'm going to use my rotary tool just to even out those edges as well as the top and the bottom. So again, this was another idea that I had seen on Pinterest. I saw tons of fabric envelopes. So just go on there and have a look to see all the different styles that they have. I needed to iron this out, so I'm using some water and again my mini press and my Cricut heat pad here. I'm gonna just add some water. Oh, already did that. I'm gonna add some water again and iron out the back side here. So now I'm going to fold up to create my little pocket, and then I'm going to fold down the flap, and then I want to iron it into place because I needed to make sure that those lines were going to stay in place. So I did that here, and then I'm going to fold down the flap and press the top as well. So you can use this for lots of different things. You could add a little card inside or what have you, but I thought it would be really fun to combine it with the little fabric stamps that we made, as well as one other project that I'm going to show you. Here you'll see me just rounding off the corner here. I thought it just created a bit more of a realistic look. I think it just finished it off really nicely. And then I'm going to just press that down again. So I'm going to use my heat bond again, the extra strength. I will show you here in a minute. It wasn't quite enough. I should have maybe put 2 strips. I'm not exactly sure, but I end up doing another technique anyways to help hold everything into place. So again, same thing. I'm just going to cut my strips down to size, put them into place, being very careful to remain on the fabric because oops, I made a mistake and oh dear, some of the glue ended up getting on my heat pad and I had to try and remove it, and I struggled a little bit, but eventually I was able to scrape it off, and I'll show you that here in a second. So again, once those strips are in place, I'm going to use my parchment paper, and then I'm going to use my mini press to press that down. Of course, you could just use a regular iron, but here I'm just scraping off the glue. I went off just ever so slightly. It'll happen, but anyway, so once it's cooled, you can remove the backing and then press it down to create the pocket. I folded the flap down again and I'm pressing it again just to secure that that fold line there. So I discovered that the heat bond didn't work quite as well as I had hoped, so I decided to add some stitching. And you could use a sewing machine if you want, but I'm just using a needle and some embroidery floss. And I'm just going to do a simple running stitch all the way around our pocket, as well as the top of the flap. This creates a really nice decorative look. I really like the way it just adds just a bit more interest. Of course, you could use a pattern fabric, or even felt would work really well for this envelope as well, but I'm just using some thicker natural canvas fabric, and you can see how nice that looks. I went all the way around, and then I'm just going to use a simple knot, and to secure that simple knot I am going to be adding just a little bit of some fabric glue, which I will show in a moment. This is the Craft Medley brand. I get it from my local dollar store. So I'm going to allow that to dry, and you're ready to use this for anything. Like I said, you could add a little card inside. So I was looking at it, I'm like, it feels like it just needs one more little detail. So I decided to go around and just trim it off a little bit with the pinking shears, and I really like the way that looked, but you do not have to do this step. It looks great on its own the way it is, but I just like that added texture. Isn't this just a fun little pocket? So again, I'm going to show you what it looks like here just on its own, so you can use it any way you'd like, but this is the second part to a 3-part project. You're going to want to grab that second piece of cardstock and fabric that we glued together. I'm cutting out just a basic heart shape here. You can cut out any shape that you'd like. I thought since it's Valentine's Day coming up, this would be fun to do. And I just hand did it. You could use your Cricut machine, Cricut Maker, or a die cutting set. I've got this little love quote and some extra fabric. I'm also using some fern green archival ink. It's a permanent ink and a makeup sponge. And I'm just adding a little bit to the exterior, the edge of this little paper piece. I just like the way that looks. And you don't have to, of course, do that if you don't want. I'm going to glue that little paper piece onto this scrap piece of fabric. So I'm going to glue it down first, so then I can cut it out nicely. Again, using my fabric glue. Smooth it out, and then I'm going to press it into the fabric. I find that the fabric glue works really well with the cardstock and fabric. So I put something flat on top, added some weight, allowed it to dry, and now I'm going to cut it out. Just using my scissors, just going around, and then I'm going to just rough up the edges a little bit just by removing some of the threads, and that would just help just give it a bit more of a rustic organic look. So I'm just using my fingernails, just roughing it up. Now I'm going to just place it in the middle of our heart. It looks really cute. Again, using my fabric glue. So again, I'm going to put something flat on top, allow it to dry well before you put it into your little pocket. It's all ready to go. Isn't this so pretty? You could use this for anything. You can even use it in a journal, or you could use it to decorate the front of a card. I thought that would be pretty as well. So now we're going to put the 3 pieces together. I'm going to tuck my sweet little heart inside of the envelope, and then I'll show you what each of the stamps look like. Now, I would hot glue the stamp onto the flap, the top of the flap, and then I would see what I have for a low tack glue for the bottom portion to seal it, or you could even use just a little piece of Velcro to attach that to the main pocket as well as the stamp. But here it looks all together. I think this is such a sweet little gift, perfect for any time of year. And it's a really great way to use up all kinds of different scraps. So this one is going to be using a larger piece of scrap fabric. I got this from a friend. I think it's absolutely beautiful. And I wanted to create something for my mom. She moved into a new place and she's creating an art gallery wall. So I thought it would be fun to make her a piece of art for her wall. And this is such an easy way to do it. I needed to iron out all the wrinkles. I don't want any wrinkles to be showing on this piece. So I just sprayed some water and I'm using my regular iron, and I am using my heat press mat, but of course I'd normally do it on an ironing board. You're going to need an artist canvas here. This is a gallery style, so it's the thicker canvas. It's a 12 by 14. I get these from a local shop, but of course you can get these anywhere on Amazon or at Michael's, wherever you find canvases. So I'm going to lay the fabric over my canvas, and I'm trying to make it so that the pattern is more in the center, but the edges are going to wrap around the canvas to the back. So I've got enough there for me to staple the fabric onto this canvas. So I'm taking my time to make sure that those flowers are towards the middle of this canvas as much as possible. So I'm just kind of fiddling around here quite a bit, pulling on it just gently to make sure that I've got enough room on the back, as you see me here, to staple it into place. So once you're happy with that, you're going to flip it over carefully so nothing falls out of place. And then you're going to start to tack it into place with your staple gun. So I attempted to staple it here, but I'm like, oh shoot, my staple gun is out of staples. So I loaded it up. I used the 8mm size, and it was it's not like the really deep ones, so that's the size that you want. I'm going to start to staple it in the middle on each side. You just want to be careful that you don't pull it too tight, but you want it taut. If you pull it too tight, you're going to distort the image, so you do want to be careful. I'm just going to start off again, like I said, with one staple on each side before I move on. I'm going to trim off any excess as needed right here. Again, just using my scissors. And of course, I'm going to be saving that scrap for another project. So I'm just going to make sure it looks good before I continue on, because at this point you could just remove the staple and fix any mistake that you've made. Looks good, so now I'm going to continue on. I'm going to again just pull taut, not too tight, and I'm going to continue to add some staples all the way around the edge. And then I'm going to show you how I do the corners as well. So with the corners, I'm going to cut off the tip there, and then you want to fold down the one side and staple it down. You're going to lift the corner, and the one edge, you want it to meet up with the edge of your canvas, just like there, and then staple it down. Lift up the other part, and same thing, you want that edge to line up with the edge of the canvas and staple it down. You can see how nice and clean that is. It takes a little bit of fiddling around to get it figured out, but once you get it figured out, you'll know exactly what to do. So again, fold that one piece down and staple it into place. Lift the corner up so it's nice and even there, and then fold down the other side so it's even with the edge as well. So I'm going to staple this into place, fold up the other edge, staple it down, fold up the other edge so it's even to the canvas, and then again, staple it down. Just want to make sure you don't have too much bulk, otherwise it will be really difficult to staple through all that excess fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and just clean up any of the excess around the inner edge as well and finish up all my corners, and then I will show you how it turned out. I was actually so happy. This is one of the easiest ways to create art. I've done this before and it is so effective. This one turned absolutely beautiful. I've already showed my mom and she loves it. Here's a playlist to all my other fabric scrap DIYs for you to check out. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Let me know what your favorite project was here today, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.